Stop trying to be normal. Have you ever told yourself that? If you have attempted to be yourself in any serious way, then you'll probably realize pretty quickly that it's not such a simple matter. One of my favorite quotes around being yourself is from The Simpsons, and I can't remember the exact words, but it's basically Marge telling Lisa, just be yourself. And she's thinking, be myself? I've been myself my whole life and it hasn't worked. So clearly there's more to getting by in this world than being yourself. So with that in mind, what does it mean to stop trying to be normal? Hi everyone, Paul Mikolev here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So I've shared one quote from you on this topic already, and at the end of this video I'm going to share my other absolute favorite quote around the concept of being myself versus changing for others. See if you can guess who it might be. I don't think you will be able to, because it's not exactly the most well-known reference, but I'll be curious to see if anyone gets it right. So I personally like to reframe this question. Rather than saying, what's the best strategy? Should I be myself? Should I blend in? Should I stand out? Should I try and be myself at all costs? Is masking okay? Like, what's the best strategy here? Instead, what if I got to choose what I did in any given moment? Which meant that I could adopt a different strategy in a different situation to achieve whatever it was that I was trying to achieve in that situation. So sometimes I don't want attention, and sometimes it's easiest to deliberately blend in and camouflage so that I don't draw additional attention to myself. And other times it's good to stand out and to show the world a little bit of my autistic identity so that I can more easily attract attention and connect with people who are interested to talk to me and interested to connect with me. Now, obviously, if I were camouflaging all the time, then no one would see what's inside me and no one would be able to connect with my experience. And eventually that would be really lonely and really challenging to get in touch with myself and connect with other people. But at the same time, if I am always the odd one out, if I'm always standing out and drawing attention, then that is really draining sometimes. I don't always want to talk to people. I don't always want to have to explain why I'm different and attract attention, and sometimes it's nice to just leave the house and come back and not be noticed by anyone. So I have done both in my life. There have been times where I deliberately dress up. I'm thinking of like formal occasions like weddings and funerals and graduations and things where I've worn a suit and tie and done everything that I'm expected to do to kind of blend in with everyone else. And that's kind of what wearing a suit does as a man. You kind of blend in with everyone else and no one stands out in any way. And apparently that's desirable. So I can do that sometimes. And at other times, I used my dreadlocks, for example, as a gimmick to stand out and be very different from my peers. And I talked about this a little bit in my other video on the foreigner strategy. Deliberately being the odd one out means that it's easier to gain acceptance in certain situations because I'm not expected to be the same as everyone else. I'm expected to be the odd one out, and so I get treated differently. So both of those strategies work in different situations. I'm not going to pretend that I've always got the balance right, though. I can think of lots of examples, especially social examples, where I personally really like to meet new people and to connect with people and to just meet I find human beings fascinating and interesting. So I've done a lot of traveling, I've done a lot of couch surfing and other things like that where you meet a really wide variety of people. And then finally, discovering the autistic community has been great for that too, to meet a wide variety of people. And I find that really interesting. There have been some times, though, where I'm at a social gathering and I'm trying to connect in the wrong way. And by wrong way, I mean wrong way for me, because it doesn't work for me. And that looks like being engaged, looking people in the eye and paying attention and talking and telling jokes and responding and being really engaged in whatever the conversation is, even if it's a little bit superficial. And what generally happens is, if I end up doing that, it takes a lot of energy to maintain that persona. You might call it a mask if you want, if that's helpful. But it's really just my strategy at the time, right? Sometimes I can use that persona and that strategy in a good way. And if I use it too much, it's just too draining and it doesn't get me what I actually wanted, which was connection and having an interesting conversation with the person. So when I do that and then eventually I've got no more energy, I have to withdraw and I have to leave the group and I go off by myself, and I feel incredibly lonely because there's all of these people around me everywhere and I'm not actually connecting to them. I did a video on that as well. The difference of how do you feel lonely in a crowd. Sometimes the more people there are around me, the more lonely I feel, because it's not about the physical presence, it's about, do I feel connected to the other people or not. So in that sense, what I really wanted was for one person to connect with. I would much prefer to leave the vibing, happening energy of the big group of a party and go off with one person and just sit and have a really relaxed conversation and have a really personal interaction where we talk about something that's important to me and important to you, and there's a real connection there. And the only way to do that is to be more myself and less what I think other people want me to be. So that's why when I'm in social situations, often my best strategy is to deliberately stand out. Very often my strategy is to sit by myself, for example, and I will, instead of trying to join in on a group, because that's really hard, I will go and sit by myself. And that will be a little bit awkward for a little while, but eventually someone will come and say hello, and it will be the kind of person who wants to talk to me. And I don't feel like I have to blend in or do anything too specific to be accepted in that situation. You might see that there's a certain cost allocated to every one of these options. The cost of standing out is that there's additional attention and additional work that I have to do before I can start to really meet someone. So for example, if I'm sitting by myself, then that's kind of challenging for a while. Why don't I just go and join a table and just sit like everyone else? Wouldn't that be easier? Wouldn't that be just the normal standard thing to do, and it works for everyone else? Why can't I just do that? I could do that, but very often I prefer to sit by myself, but there's a cost to that. And similarly, if I were to join a table, do what everyone else is doing, engage in small talk, be present, look people in the eye, all of those kind of things that people expect me to do, then that has a cost to it as well. That has a cost of my energy. It has a cost of a lack of connection, because we're more likely to stay at that superficial level if I'm less authentic to myself. So which one do I prefer to do? There's no obvious answer there, and I have to make the decision in the moment as to what I really want and which strategy is the one that is going to be the most likely to get me there, or at least what I feel like doing at the time. There's a third strategy that I haven't talked much about, which is camouflaging and blending in. And the idea of camouflaging is to not attract any attention at all, rather than to be seen as a member of the group and as you know, more or less equal to everyone else. I want to just not be seen at all. So that would be hiding instead of being seen. I could be in a group, but I would definitely not say anything. And I would try to just be there without attracting any attention. And again, that has a cost. The cost is a lack of connection and a lack of authenticity because no one really sees me when I'm not letting myself be seen. But at the same time, it avoids some of the other costs. It avoids the costs of masking and trying to engage when it takes a lot of energy to engage. It avoids the cost of trying to explain myself and trying to deliberately be different and attract attention that way. So no matter what strategy I use, there's always a cost and there's always different types of benefits that we can potentially achieve. Personally, that was a really big realization for me when I recognized that there is no one best way. And for me personally, if I feel comfortable and I find a good way to camouflage sometimes, and a good way to blend in sometimes, and a good way to stand out sometimes, then I can actually use that to navigate this complex social world in a way that suits me. And it's perhaps not that surprising that a neurodivergent individual who has lots of different ways of being needs more than one strategy and more than one solution to be able to get by and basically get my social needs met. We've been talking a lot about social stuff in this video. So I guess there's a trade-off, and the way to make that healthy is the stories that we tell ourselves around what I'm doing. So if I'm standing out and I'm telling myself, oh, I'm the weirdo, no one's going to like me, I wish I weren't standing out and people are going to be making fun of me and think that I'm different and all of these things, that's a really negative story. But I could be doing the exact same thing with a positive story about myself, saying, well, I have the confidence to do what I want and not care about what other people think. They probably don't even care about me anyway. So that's fantastic. I don't need to stress. The people that want to talk to me and want to connect with me will talk to me and will connect with me. And that is the payoff for being different and being a little bit quirky and standing out, just like my dreadlocks or the foreigner strategy. It will attract some people and repel other people. And the people that it does attract will be fantastic. We'll have a great time and we'll actually connect. Similarly with camouflaging or masking or blending in, if my inner dialogue is, if only they saw what's inside, they would reject me, or if my inner dialogue is, I'd better be really careful that no one sees through the mask, otherwise they'll reject me, or other kind of shame messages like that, then that's a horrible experience. I'm getting the worst of both worlds because number one, no one sees me, and number two, I'm not letting people dispel the negative story that's in my head. And actually, probably the reality would be if I did show a little bit more of myself, then that it would allow for that connection, and people could tell me that they really did like the real me rather than only reacting to the mask that I show them. Anyway, big topic. I guess I wanted to emphasize that there is no one strategy. So trying to be normal, like what does that even mean? In my experience, what it means is trying to do what everyone else does and follow the strategy that works for other people, which is a terrible strategy for me. My strategies tend to be very different to what work for other people. The best thing for me is to do what works for me. So with that in mind, I'll share my absolute favorite quote when it comes to this topic of blending in, standing out, self-esteem, changing for other people, trying to be normal. Should I be myself? Should I bend and blend in? All of that is summarized perfectly in this one quote. It's from a comedy series called Community. And there's this character Abed who has kind of been the pet project of the others in this episode. And they've basically been trying to get him to change himself so that he can get a date. Obviously, it doesn't really work very well. And finally, he says this: when you really know who you are and what you like about yourself, then changing for other people is not such a big deal. And I think that really captures it for me. It's like when an actor puts on a role, they're not masking or pretending too much because everyone knows that they're acting in that sense. So it means that you're allowed to take on the role and it doesn't affect who you are as a person. It's not a criticism of who I am as a person and my very often introverted traits if I sometimes try and step outside myself and engage a little bit more. Because I still know who I am and I still like who I am and I can be someone else a little bit sometimes, and that's completely fine too. Another good analogy for this is culture. If I'm in someone else's house or someone else's country or visiting someone else's church or whatever it is, then I can just do what I need to do to be appropriate in that situation. And it's not any reflection on me. Like, I'm still just as much me when I'm participating in someone else's culture as I am when I'm doing my own thing at home. And sometimes fitting in, blending in, doing what someone else thinks is appropriate is a really great way to experience new things, if I know who I am as a person before that. Anyway, we're probably getting a little bit deep and meta with that, but I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm really curious to hear your experience of if you like to blend in or stand out, or if you've ever told yourself you should try and be normal, or maybe should try to not be normal. That's common too. So please leave a comment if you've got an experience around that. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye.